Welcome to Nerd from Reverse Battle. In today's video, I have a guest with me, my man Galaxy. Some of y'all might know him, some of you guys might not, but he's been a great old friend of mine, not only from these Universe Online days, but across the board. He's a nerd like me, and you guys see what's on not only the title, but as well on screen. We're going to be talking about two famed, depressing, but as well most willful, undeniably goated level heroes in Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker 616, the spectacular, the ultimate, the amazing, versus Mark Grayson, the half-human, half-Viltrumite grandson of the Grand Great Emperor of Viltrum, Argul, and as well the most undeniably, I got that dog in me type dude, Invincible. Go ahead and say what's up to the people, Galaxy.
Happy to be here.
But yeah, as you guys know, as always, when we talk about both characters and individual forms, it's gonna be discussion like based in a sense. So we're gonna be talking about both of them in their own free form. You know what I'm saying? And again, appreciate my man Galaxy for being here. Yeah, but yeah, let's go and get it in. So we're gonna start with Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker. So everybody already knows the case of the origin of Peter Parker. Did a selfish action that got his uncle inadvertently killed, and this will go about sparking his means of being selfless, being a better man, and being a man because of him being a superhero. Now, again, we're talking about the 616 comics. We're not talking about any other versions, so anything represented on screen or a different form is just, obviously, as always, just representation as well to keep your dopamine. It's not actually about, the crossroads, it's about scaling or whatever the case may be. But when it comes down to how powerful my man Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, is, it's a multi-different crossroads thing. So I'm going to be considering everything that comes with Peter Parker and try to dumb it down the most consistent. Like with me, involving, different stuff. Galaxy is decently well knowledge in different transverses, different scaling and knowledge possibly to list off. So with this being said, I'm going to give you, Galaxy, the stage/floor to go speak your stuff, and I'll speak my stuff about Spider-Man. So going to the audience, what's up?
I mean, I've been a fan of the character for a while. I'm a pretty big Spider-Man fan. I'm not like huge fanboy levels, but I got introduced to the character through the Sam Raimi movies, and basically just learned more about him since then. I mean, he has some pretty good feats in the comics, lifting up pretty much an entire skyscraper after it collapsed on top of him. That's just insane. That's in some insane level of human strength. But he's not he's not weak by any means. It's just and even someone who doesn't know a whole lot about Invincible, I know that there's no way in hell that he can beat Mark. If Mark is anywhere near, or if he's even grazing the kind of strength Superman has, then Spider-Man's he's close. He's not gonna. I don't see any kind of reality where he does win.
Well, you can go about it very deeply talking about that. So, with this being said, starting on a different form, how I see it winning is entirely based off of, obviously, depending on the case of the version of Spider-Man and how consistent you think it is. In my opinion, I think that these characters can be very much tight-knit, solidly relative, right, involving all different talks involving the character. So, when it comes down to just looking at Peter, right, obviously we know his iconic origin, like I said, different point, right, this is the selfless man, changed from his selfless actions that got his uncle killed and as well lost his Aunt May through being a better man because he's a superhero, went through greater activity, went through all different type of trials and tribulations. What is being said, he, because of being one of the most highest peak stands of street tier and indomitable will and spirit, has faced all different type of odds of the most crazy regard, right? This man, Spider-Man, has duked it out here and there with different versions of Hulk, been able to decently stagger Hulk, take blows from them, fight off, get around different people, different exceptional stand. He's been able to fight off different members of the X-Men. He could almost, break Wolverine's neck.
Cosmic beings who, emperors like Thanos. He straight blows with that guy. I'm pretty sure he's even fought Ronin before in the comics.
Yeah, and all of these, has mixed different, concrete and or contextual matter. But the fact is that Spider-Man with speed and as well just having ridiculous levels of, not only agility, mobility, his spider sense, precognition, which, you know, taking Galaxy knows, but just in case the audience knows, I talked about before, is pretty much having a preset or greater, you know, forecoming sight of something. So as I talked about in my shameless plug, why Virgil versus Heimdall is in close video, it's a level of being able to intricately see on who and how things are coming, but it more or less just gives him, you know, preset initiative to get out of the way. He can feel, it's that sense, has a sixth sense of what's coming, and so he's able to react to these people very proficiently. Again, he's fought off, you know, again, great deal of the X-Men, almost broke Wolverine's neck, and thinking about how he was going to do it. He broke his jaw recently in the comics. He's fought with a Fantastic Four without, you know, taking too much severe stains of damage. They would outspeed sometimes the Human Torch. He's been able to hold his own against different, you know, very formidable cases or street tier people, even in the highest regard. Venom, who does a lot of different crazy shit regardless of the host. He's been able to stand to multiple different peak stands of fighters, take a blow from Thanos, faces different people. And it's a thing that has been definitely talked about, and I've been on record, you know, speaking about it in very in-depth form. And if you know me from my different talks and accountings of it, and, you know, have heard different conversations, you know, discourse on Galaxy side, that I proudly believe that not only this man Miles stomps Deku, but it's mainly because of the fact that everything that I'm saying about Peter consistently throughout multiple interpretations and adaptations, that this man Miles is over Peter. So everything I'm saying about this man Peter himself acknowledges, and it's shown their first outing, right? Now Ultimate 616, that he is over that. And Peter does all these different crazy shit. He's been able to stand again to way more of a plethora of scaling to reasonably, you know, say consistently. He's ridiculous. And like Miles, he arguably has more universal showcases of feats and higher scale stuff than, like, for instance, Deku with Miles has multi-continental. A character has, you know, planetary or star. Like, he just got so much more. And there's even just different writers and, you know, directors in the matter for the stories and continuity that acknowledge that Peter has so much awe and power scope and has so much great significance in his will and burst of, you know, power and potential that if he really wanted to, he could grow to so much greater height that he could be on the same league as some very high tier people. Even if for a street tier person, he's over a great deal of street tier, mid tier, metahuman, depending on how you perceive it, he's really only under the top big dogs. Being in a panel that I'm going to show on screen from the video, being the fact of it being only people like the Thing, Hulk, Thor, Namor the Submariner, which is pretty crazy to think about because a lot of people be, you know, lowballing Namor, right? But besides, you know, just spending King of Atlantis, that also goes to other people. So again, I want to make this clear, like shown on screen and other stuff, that I'm not saying that Spider-Man consistently is on these levels entirely or really should be really rationally under. It's just the fact that he can compete with people on these levels. He can stand toe-to-toe with these people consistently most of the time on these levels. And he could do a lot more than what another person could do. So this is like being on Harold level feat timing. And again, this is all 616 Peter Parker. Consistently all of this at the lowest end, right? If you super low ball, he'd be like a city level plus multi-city dude, right? But you could get multi-continental, you could get planetary, universal, solar system, multiversal, you could go crazy. To me, I think all of this from the comics and things that he's done, you could easily get him to be a planetary to higher stretch into the universal cosmos, but I think planetary to multiplanetary is not too surprising, right? And, you know, people that have this mindset that, oh, how can just like a superhuman man bit by a radioactive spider be this crazy? I mean, if you guys are fine with a guy with wings on his ankles, a guy that literally has 6 claws coming out entirely through his body and is able to bypass durabilities of people they shouldn't, or you guys are okay with a man who, in all accounts, is blind, regardless if he has great ears and an echolocation sense, in the words of the late great Stan Lee, is better than Spider-Man, can sense a literal rocket coming his way and just dodge it with just a flick of his neck, then I don't really see how there's a problem with this. But again, we're going to get to this man, Mark, what is being said. So Galaxy in his own words said that, you know, he don't know that much about Mark. I'll probably be the best person I feel like, to most concretely and concise as a brother prone to do, explain. But simply put, Mark, I've talked about a little bit different people involved in his verse on my channel. With this being said, I'm a big, avid not only lover, connoisseur, and reader of Invincible from Powerscaling, narrative, and really big fan of the show. Obviously, I can't wait for season 4. But Mark is, even in the case of being based on some aspects from Superman, essence of, mythos, and obviously iconically based on Spider-Man. These two have, crossed over in their own right. So there's a level of, depending on how you perceive the continuity, these characters being canon to each other, which is going to be a big thing, like the argument for scaling, right? Mark isn't on the same aspect parts, on the aspects of, like, really Superman level. To be fair, he is very crazy powerful for his verse and some others, but in truth, Mark, in the grand scheme of different shit, you could say would be weak. Now again, we're doing this consistently with like top tier Mark. We can considerate, some different outings of like their versions, like, post the series Mark, aka time skip Mark, where he's like the grand emperor of his race of Viltrumites, right, at the end of the series. And as well, I don't know, maybe a black suit Peter, if you think like Peter can already like best him at his highest, right? So just like making that clear again, at the highest like escapades and Escobars, right, for this man Mark, he wouldn't be on those levels. But consistently, Mark, shown in tier list, shown in multiple scaling, should easily multiple times be scaling to, from moon to planetary, reasonable, small planetary to about large planetary. He could duke out with the highest grandstand of different people, right? As a Viltrumite, he's super resilient and resourceful, very capable, very strong, very crazy, got a knack for bucking with people. He got a heart of steel and got some balls on him. You know what I'm saying? He's standing against the most powerful and impregnable foes ever. I've talked about multiple of his race on this channel. So again, everything that they have done, you could just upscale him from him participating in a 3-way explosion of Mother Viltrum, which is bigger than Earth. The fact that he can fight foes that are able to be threats to the planet on a ecosystem regard, but as well planetary regard. Planet eaters, he's able to be so crazy and impactful that he's able to literally choke out the second strongest Viltrumite physically and most oldest in the case of Conquest, right? With his blood tied to the core strength of Viltrum, with him being, the grandson of Lord Argul, who was a top tier Viltrumite. He's able to box with Thrag, right? Even if him being slightly weaker in the sun. And because of his super atoms, it gives him not only, from being a Viltrumite, where he already possesses super strength, super speed, advanced reflexes, very resilient and capable arguable healing factor, and very dummy durable skin. It gives him, not only possibly makes it super speed and greater enhanced, ways of fighting, but it gives him a very great fierce stance of tenacity and rage burst, meaning that because of his already brutal sensation and instinct as a Viltrumite, mixed as well being human, he has adrenaline and it comes together for him to be a very colossal figure, making him ridiculously a very powerful powerhouse. Being taught and makes different forms of techniques and capabilities to not just all around his strength, right? He is a good, decent fighter, and arguably, unlike Peter, who is a lot of times self-taught, but has had experiences with different forms like martial artists and people, and duked out with people that are, reasonably seasoned, skilled people, like, I don't know, Kraven the Hunter, Taskmaster, Silver Sable, Black Cat even. I can go further and beyond. He is somewhat of a more skilled, defined person and can rock with people that have way more better experience and techniques, right? Like, eventually being stronger than Anissa, stronger than Conquest, stronger than his own father, Omni-Man, and even Thrag, right? So that's a great display of that. With, speed on both, they're both multiple times shown because of the scaling chain to be easily multiple times faster than light, right? 100,000s, millions of times, shit, billions. You could argue so many different levels, right? You could stretch, Peter to be, pushing infinite. You could try to say like, he's not bound by time, and we talk about his speed stuff, but to me, especially a price of a galaxy, agree that both of these people have multiple light speed feats. So I would say that they're pretty relative all around congruently on that. And we have Mark just pit for pit, bang for bang, pound for pound, ding for ding, is able to rock with all different magnitude of people, to where I suffice to say that Mark easily, because of that, would have a lot of different advantages. But I feel like it's a lot more of a closer mixed fight, and this is where I feel like, iconically, by the end of the video, where I give my inclusive opinion mixed with Galaxy. So before I greater speak, Galaxy, how do you feel about all the information I said about not only Peter and Mark, or has your opinion not changed? Do you have any disagreements? Like, what do you have to say to the people?
Most of it. And I get what you're saying, but, like, what's Peter gonna do if... Alright, you mentioned he can, like, cocoon and try to suffocate Mark. Couldn't Mark just pretty much burst out of that and just grab Peter by, like, a chokehold and, like, fly up to space and suffocate him? I feel like... Because I'd say... Not that... Obviously, I don't think Invincible or Omni-Man are even close to Superman in their, like, how powerful they are, but they have similarities, and I don't know. I feel like, while Peter's way smarter, in my opinion, than Mark, based on just what I've seen. Keep in mind, again, I'm not entirely knowledgeable on Invincible, but
I wouldn't say you're wrong.
I don't know. I feel like just pure strength alone, Mark has it in terms, like, just out of pure strength. He's beaten, like, these very, very powerful alien beings on his own. Peter, I mean, yes, he's fought these beings, but usually he's had some help in terms of, I could be wrong, but I don't remember ever seeing him, like, solo characters like Thanos, or just, like, powerful beings like that, like Mark has.
Well, because here's what I would say, so I partially interrupt, but I feel like you could say the same for Mario some of these occasions. Granted, Mark has a lot more mixed bag, more decisive wins over people of these scales more confidently, but there's every form of, I feel like, argument that Peter has banged out or stood a lot more better against these people, a lot more than Mark has. And a lot of the time, Mark is either severely weaker, not as strong, or gets outdone a lot of the time, more times than not, by others, than actually doing as concisely strong as them in his mind to where he could compete. And if in greater sense he does, is a lot of context stuff, right? So for instance, with Conquest, you can make stretch that is a level of, like, random berserk amp to where he was able to suffocate him, to choke him out, because Conquest, I don't know how much you know about him, is not only this very ridiculously experienced dude, but Mark only gets stronger than him after a great deal of time. It takes a very long time for Mark to reasonably get as strong as the others because of his age, mixed with him being, only half Viltrumite, not fully blooded to the same degree, even though he's basically full-blooded. And the fact that Mark's morale, his conscience, all of that. But simply put, Conquest, right, when they're fighting in outer space, because Viltrumites can hold their breath for a very long time, Mark does not need to breathe in space fully. He could hold his breath for days on end, fly across the universe, do all type of crazy shit. He could, hold his breath ridiculously long underwater. So I'll get to, like, the cocoon shit, right? But he only was able to best him because Conquest did eventually run out of breath. And Conquest can't control his breathing because he's, generally old. So he was only able to choke him out because of that. He barely beat Thrag, and the sun was eating away at both of them, and he pretty much was going to die with him if he didn't get saved by Alan. I'm not going to talk about Anissa because then I'm talking about rape. I'm not going to get into that. But, like, he's not stronger than her at that point. And then, like, it's everything else. Like, he's just not as strong. While even though Peter, you can say the same thing, doesn't beat Thanos confidently, doesn't beat Ronan confidently, doesn't beat Doom confidently, doesn't even beat, the X-Men, depending on what we're talking about, which version of the X-Men, or even the Fantastic Four, in a full-on fight, and there's multiple Avengers that should body him. But the fact that he's able to stand a little bit more toe-to-toe to these people, take blows, do more, and there are some powerful people that he has beat. Again, he broke Wolverine's jaw, and Wolverine is a pretty powerful dude. Even though he's not, I would say, stronger than Hulk, he could at least stand the Hulk, and we know Hulk is crazy, right? He's been able to fight, different hero-like characters and stand somewhat, the Herald of Galactus with the axe and his ball looks like Thanos. He's been able to fight him. He was able to at least touch, my man Rad, aka Silver Surfer, in general. And then I think the most impressive person I could just think of that Peter somewhat scales to is Blackheart, who did solo the recent Avengers and is a Ghost Rider villain. Correct me if I'm wrong. So like there's a pretty good feat there. And again, Miles, like I'm gonna talk about this more in my Miles versus Deku vid. It's been talked about to death, but Deku is over Ares. And even though Ares is a jobber, Ares like farts and he kills all of Invincible. I'm just saying he's just a built different dude, and I would say that Peter's the same because Ares is not that strong. There's also, even though again context, Peter has showcased he's been able to use his ingenuity, which is really his true power beyond that, akin to Tony Stark, to get around powerful people like the Juggernaut, who is very crazy and powerful. Obviously, he's not as powerful as Juggernaut, nothing. But if you think Peter is stronger than Wolverine, Deadpool, and some people do think he's stronger than Colossus. All three of these people have a run-in with him, and even Colossus has been able to, correct me if I'm wrong, knock out the Juggernaut once. Then I believe that it's more or less he can get to these levels a lot more confidently than Mark. That's my all-around point. And the suffocation thing, I think it's because not only Peter is as strong to even stronger, but he could just do so much more. And to me, like I'm taking you, Galaxy, in the audience, you've seen the scene where Peter is able to wrap around the lizard or, swirl around Thanos or do crazy shit like that. If he did that all around Mark's body and cocooned him to where he would encase him in so much case of like web fluid, he would literally like no weird shit, jizz this motherfucker up to where he's ensnared, right? He over here looking like the parts of a fucking, what is it, Qatar with the fucking Banto and the fucking veil, right? And he can't move, he can't properly breathe in the long run. I think he would get defeated. You could say like he would out-breathe it, if that's even the rightful saying, because again, he could hold his breath for a long time. But in a fight where, you're breathing, doing all that stuff, like Conquest, and I would say Mark's cardio, again, unless we're talking way older Mark, isn't the best. I do think he would get tired. I do think he could outdo him. And even if he broke through and try to put him in a chokehold or throw him out, I do think they have equal speeds where you get around. And I also think, like, again, physically, they're about the same. And, like, someone has tried to throw this man Peter into orbit or far away and didn't try to kill him. He's also just very creative. Like, he can create fucking shields. He can create fortresses. He can create different unique tangles of different stuff, weapons with his webs. He even create parachutes like a Spectacular Spider-Man, which all this stuff is what he does in the comics. So, in my opinion, again,
why do you think Peter is as stronger than Invincible, like physical strength? Because I mean, I just don't see that.
Well, I can provide like scans if you want, but like in the video, the reason why I think this is because not only, again, he scales to Miles, he showcased physical comparison to others. And even though Miles has a lot more crazy amps, and I know that he is empowered by a god now, the African god of stories, Azanzi, however you say his name, the fact that Peter scales somewhat to that, and he's been able to physically compare to people that, again, move very much in the combative sense of very physically strong dudes. He's able to out-wrestle them. He's been able to outdo a lot of different people. He has same lifting strength feats. I mean, just off of recollection, again, I'll show the scans, or again, if you want some scans, I can show you, you know what I'm saying? I got the receipts. But, like, jokes aside, like, generally, I do think Peter is as strong. Let me say this. I think he's as strong in a physical collide fight. And lifting strength, maybe Mark could be stronger, again, when he's older. I'm saying this is all base, consistent, and when I say older, again, I mean Mark pushing over hundreds of years old. I mean Mark when he's like fucking 28. Like, Mark finishes the series when he's like 30 years old. Assassin's Creed level timing of being decently out of prime, dang near cusp of like this stance of life, right? This stance of life akin to Connor Kenway like timing. I think he's reasonably as physically strong, again, because of scaling to people of similar regard. Again, he does better in some different fighting compare than Colossus, than Wolverine. I think that he's able to compete physically with Luke Cage, who's able to fight people that are literally supposed to be heralds to Thanos instead. And he's over him. He's over a bunch of other street tiers, a bunch of people you think are physically strong. Rhino is able to give Miles decently a problem, so there you go. I mean, it just keeps going. I mean, he just has so much stuff that concludes that. I mean, again, I think that Mark has lifting feats that if we put into a calculation, from lifting so much to where he can lift a part of a moon, lift higher than a continent, and as well lift so much that he could theoretically push through the core of the earth, fighting Hulk, even doing any damage, and being able to survive and was getting squished by him. And he's able to lift mountains, rearrange continents. Spider-Man was able to, live out different collides with different colossal forces. And, the fact that he's able to even stand to blows in the most crazy regard, lift crazy big ton individuals, and even show with his adrenaline. Like, we have that iconic thing where, I'm Spider-Man! He starts locking in. He could be very strong. And I think probably my best mindset for like a lifting feat or like physical strength feat is when Peter was pushed to so much adrenaline, pushed to so much rage and so much anger that when he fought Venom, who has a lot of similar strength feats and different stuff, he was able to literally punch Eddie Brock out of the symbiote. And the symbiote in other versions, even though it's very mixed consistent, has showcased it's so strong it's able to absorb the most strongest people. I'm talking Wolverine, Hulk, Thor, Galactus. He does all this stuff. He's able to punch the symbiote clean out of his body. It is a straight hit to the body, to the jaw. That's better than any feat Mark has. The only feats Mark has is he was able to Roman Reigns spear Thrag into the sun. That's really all I feel like he has.
To me, this plays into my big issue with power scaling, because, like, it's so inconsistent. Because you see issues where, like, comics where Spider-Man, like you said, does absolutely insane shit like that, and, like, but then there's other issues where he gets beaten by, like, damn Speed Demon. Like, it makes no sense, and Speed Demon is, like, one of the worst speedsters, in my opinion, in comics. Like, he's not powerful, but, like, that's the problem, because, like, it's just very inconsistent, because that's just the nature of comics, too, because they're constantly getting new writers who constantly want to do different things with the characters. But, I don't know, I feel like I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but what I'm trying to say is, I don't know, it feels just
unsensible,
inconsistent.
Yeah, like,
not your argument, but like his power scaling in general, like, because you see, like he's able to go toe to toe sometimes with like Wolverine, Luke Cage, or do what you said and like literally punch Eddie Brock out of the symbiote. But then you see him get very easily beaten by characters like Doc Ock or Speed Demon or any of those like very low tier characters who, frankly, if he's, do you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. It just seems very like flamboyantly preposterous, and I said this even before with my preset argument. You heard me, and like you, I don't want to go on a whole elongated talk, no Martin Luther King speech, but suffice to say, the most precise place of perception I feel like of it is simply this: is that there's a lot of obvious inconsistencies within comics, and this goes with a great broad deal of power scaling. But I feel like you just have to follow the most consistent train of logic, look at it a lot more. There's so many arguments you could make that don't just fall off of chain or persistency of this, right? I agree that comics and power scaling can be very inconsistent, but I've said it multiple times before, not just like in comparison with you, but just in general for the audience, that you can make arguments for so much stuff on why and how a person, right, can be this powerful or not. But what is more consistent? Mark being more profusely planet level to the most highest end at base, or Peter scaling to very high tier people, and him getting beat by low tier people regardless of those contexts, regardless of him getting hurt, regardless of Black Cat severely hurting him, even other stuff, and also just obviously like both of them, they both hold back a lot. I would say Peter to a lot more high extent, right? Because sometimes, depending on the version of Mark just be getting his ass beat in, right? It's a, running gag that he's pretty invincible. He's not truly invincible. But that's the way it is, you know what I'm saying? It's just like how congruent you could do it. But any argument you take with Peter, cosmology, versions, adaptations, he's just stronger than him. He's just a lot of the time more. And again, even if we just try to lowball both of them to being on a different scuff, I just feel like a lot of people that Peter faces or is in mix of, Mark couldn't take on. If you put Mark in Yancey Street, he's most likely getting bodied. If you put him against this man, Noel, because I'm kind of joking with Yancey Street, like, he's not going to beat Noel. He's not going to beat these other people. And there's just a lot of villains of this man, Spider-Man's Rose Gallery, that I would say would give Mark just as much, even more harder time than even any villain of, Invincible against Spider-Man. Like, I feel like...
Do you think Peter could beat, like, Conquest? Or, like, I don't know, I can't remember the guy. He's the, like, leader of the Viltrumites. He basically pretty much wears Battle Beast.
Yeah, Thrag.
Kills him.
Eddie Murphy.
Thrag.
Yeah. I think, from, again, looking at the most consistent credit of both of them, yes, I think it'd be a lot more harder, mainly because of the personality stuff. Like, Thrag, most time is bloodlust, he don't play no games. And Conquest is very wacky individual, who's on the same stuff. But they both have, like, outliers and, the factors that could allow Peter to win. Conquest is very cocky. He's an audience in his own fight. And Thrag has so much mixed merit of actually banging out to the same colossal force. And even though you got a kind of like scientific, like a more grounded approach, the level of how much fighting Viltrumites can do in outer space versus on a planet with oxygen they could breathe and all these other factors is a little bit different. But I would say that Thrag can never really last against Peter the same, and he cannot bang out. And this goes with Conquest. I mean, there's so many ways that Conquest and Thrag have been defeated. I see Peter being able to do. I see Peter being able to knock out Thrag, outlast Thrag, push him beyond his limits and best him. Or like what Mark did to kill Conquest, was he choked him out. I could see Peter putting him in that fucking John Jones level, like guillotine level hold, and choking him out and killing him that way. That's the way I see it. Now, with this being said, does that mean that Peter consistently would beat all these people 9 times out of 10? Probably not, but you could argue it. Because like, by the same logic, do you think that Thrag or Conquest could hurt Hulk or Wolverine to the point where they do those blows to them?
I think that, like, Thrag or Conquest, just based on purely what I've seen, and frankly, my knowledge extends with the TV show, if I'm going to be honest. I think maybe not the Hulk, but I think Wolverine, yeah. I not, like, kill him, because I don't think they could kill him, but I think that they could definitely hurt him. Like, knock him out, possibly. Knock him out, yes, not kill him, but...
Minimum point. It's not even like a form of gotcha thing. It's just like consideration of that. Again, with everything to be involved and to get novel reception in that, right? As I was, pretty much done conclusion there. All I really have to say is that you can take it your type of way, but again, this is the most precise, feel like way to best say it for the person. And like you said, there's so many comics, so many writers trying to do different things involving the stories and how they go about stuff. And these characters are very long lasting. Spider-Man's been around since fucking late 50s, 60s. Mark been around since early 2000s, right? He's been around for a very long time. But there's just so many ways you can conclude characters being stronger than others. And, you could go wacky with it. And I could say, like, more stuff that could, like, put Mark down. But I would never do that because, again, it just comes down to some goofy talk. I just think when you look at it from this lens, most time he would win. Again, the only really way I feel like you could say it is just, like, who's, like, in a higher tier. Mark is considered to be a meta-human character. Peter's a street tier character. So he should lose by that logic. But street tier characters get stronger. Characters are allowed to, do more. And, it's kind of maybe unfair, I guess, because Mark's story did, like, officially end, like, in that case of, like, the comics, right? Like, his story ended a long time ago. So he didn't get the chance to be as strong, I guess, as Peter. But it doesn't matter what you do. I feel like if you equal the stats, or you do it this way, he'll lose 9 times out of, 10 if you take the higher road and say that they're on the same level with the same speed, like they're multiple times massively faster than light. I think the only argument that Mark is faster is he's flying, but like Electro exists, and whatever. It's like I just see him winning. If you disagree with that, understandable. I'm just hoping that I guess like I've made my point because I'm not the only person who thinks this. I do think people be like over referencing, like saying, "Oh, like he can beat Red Hulk, he can beat Silver Surfer, he can beat all this." Well, I mean, last time I checked, bro, if my man Peter gets hit over the head with Green Goblin's glider, he gets a fucking concussion. Like, no, all I'm saying is that he'll probably beat him just on these different things, mainly because of hacks. I feel like he'll win, but again, that's just me. But yeah, anything else you gotta say, Galaxy?
Also, you've convinced, because before we kind of got into this, I was of the belief that like 9 times out of 10 Mark would for sure win. I'm not thinking 9 times out of 10 Peter would win now. Obviously, I don't think that still, but you've convinced me that Peter would have a much better chance, and I honestly, to me now at least, I can see it going either way.
That's a bit more. Well, that's all that be said. And I feel like that's it for videos. Pretty decently long one. A lot of different possible editing. Gonna, better fine conclusively tune it, right? Again, I want to say shout out to my man Galaxy for being a part of it. Yeah, bet, to possibly do more with this man from this, right? I appreciate you being considerate, open-minded, of course, to take it in and, definitely be willing to see both sides. Again, I'm not saying that Mark possibly couldn't win. This is my opinion. But again, appreciate him for being here. Appreciate y'all for watching. If you're new here, leave a like, share, subscribe, comment. Tell me what you guys think about the battle. Since you like the meme, Galaxy again. Appreciate him. And gives us bet, what to do more. But yeah, that's all I have to say. I'll see you guys in the next one.